Hello, this is Todd Siegel with the Psychic Zone. You'll have to excuse my voice because I had a cold for the past week and I'm still getting over it. Sound kind of nasally, but when you have a nose my size, it takes a long time to get rid of. I might even find some hand tools that I lost coming out of my nose. You never know. Anyway, it's good to be back. I haven't talked to you in a while. And I've been playing around with some subject matter for a while that I wanted to talk about on the show. Just things that I often discuss with people. One of those things I wanted to discuss was, or is, remote viewing. A lot of you have heard this term, remote viewing. It's a term. I mean, among psychics, it's nothing really different than a psychic does, although it has to do with focusing on things, describing them, even drawing them out. And, this is part of psychic abilities. It was also a term that was used around the 1960s for a government program employing psychics to actually find missing objects, people, places. And it kind of went out, but actually I do detect that it is still used by certain agencies. Most likely around the world, too. Psychic abilities, and we can talk about that a little bit. Now, keep in mind, this is just my opinion on anything I talk about on here. But I will say approximately 17% of the population has psychic abilities. You might think, oh my God, that's not very much. Well, actually, that's quite a bit. I would say 2 or 3% have pretty strong psychic abilities. I would say that the rest of the percentage is kind of dormant. It is, let's say, physical. This is a physical ability. Is it genetic? I do believe so. I do believe part of it is based on our genetics. But psychic abilities can also be enhanced too. And it can also be specialized in the category of things that I do. Strong psychic ability usually tends to gravitate towards mediumship as well. I do have mediumship abilities. And a lot of people think mediumship is kind of separate from psychic abilities, but no, it isn't. It's all in the same. And we're all individuals, so we all have different motivations and different interests, different skills. It's like being a carpenter that can go into somebody who specializes in sheetrock or somebody who does flooring or just a framer. So it's very similar in the psychic world to have different abilities and skills. Can a medium develop remote viewing skills? Yes. Yes. But with remote viewing, it's I don't go about a reading and say, hey, I'm going to do remote viewing. It's part of the same thing that I do. missing objects is one of the things that I'm often called upon. I was doing a missing object the other day for somebody, a customer who lost a ring. And it was in a high traffic store. And then she said to me, well, wouldn't it be logical that somebody would take it and then sell it? And I replied, yeah, it would be. It would be very logical. But that's not why you've come to me. I don't use logic. I just tell you what I see. And then she said, oh, that makes sense. Anyway, I believe psychic abilities are something that it's a physical part of us. It's not just a matter of, awakening it, but that can be done as well. Somebody might have a traumatic event that happened to them in their life and it turned it on. Some people have it early in life and some people have it much later in life. I will often talk to older people. And when I mean older, I mean 70 and above, who start getting experiences. They may have some health issues going on that are kind of pushing them out of the physical life here and experiencing mediumship. And when that happens, they get extremely freaked out. They'll be like, well, somebody is by my bed. Who is this person? And I'll read the same person even before they tell me. So psychic abilities can be brought about any time in your life. But I also wanted to talk about something else as far as psychic abilities and remote viewing. People have asked me, do you believe in aliens? Do you sense that we were visited? Do you think that, can you use your abilities to navigate the universe? And the answer is yes. If I do focus on it, if I do focus on a subject, I can see further and further into that subject. And that has happened to me recently. I have watched some interesting shows about archaeology and the pyramids and some of the ancient cultures that once inhabited our planet. And it, like I said, this is just what I see. But I've had a very intense realization of what's gone on in this planet going back millions of years. I mean, when you think about it, this planet is very old. Is it the only planet that inhabits life in our universe? Absolutely not. I do believe we at one point might have had 2 moons on our planet. I also can look into space and see other galaxies with multiple suns. The one thing that's hard, because we have only science to really back up what our history is, And although I appreciate science, there are incredible missing links that they have not seen. They have to tell it as it is, of course. But I have thought recently about the origin of us, the origin of man, humankind. And in my opinion, we are all extraterrestrial, and that's where we have come from. Okay? No, I do not believe all fish and all animals and all the different various plant life is alien on this planet, but some of the origins are. Bacteria and that can travel through space. That's been proven by science. An asteroid can contain material to seed life on other planets. If the environment is conducive to that life, to producing that life, to keeping it alive. But it's very apparent to me when I look at these old archaeological sites like the pyramids around the world and some of these incredible rocks that were carved that there's no doubt in my mind that sophisticated tools were used in creating these things and building them. Just because they have not dug up these tools and because they have not found them doesn't mean that they weren't once here. And I do have great knowledge about building. I've been a builder my whole life. And I have spent quite a bit of time working with stone, using hand tools on stone, doing carving. There's absolutely no way in my mind that these old archaeological sites were done by hand tools. So speculation is that, well, with the Egyptians, maybe UFOs came down and helped them. I'll put this one out here. How do you know that the Egyptians didn't come down on the UFOs themselves? Is it because they don't have gray skin and they look rather primitive in dress? As a remote viewer, that stuff is very trivial. That we expect aliens from other planets to come down as these gray people or dressed in tight satin or whatever, looking all modern. I remember when I used to work as a carpenter and I had very, very sophisticated, good machines. But I'd also lean over to my desk drawer and get an old-fashioned hand tool, an old planer, an old spoke shave, a chisel. And I would work with these tools uh, back and forth, the modern tool, the old tool. So if all they find on an archaeological site are old hand tools, it does not mean there weren't more sophisticated ones in use as well. Our minds look at things one way or another, very black and white. There's a lot of gray in between. Talking about our ancestry and where we come from, I do detect that there is different DNA among us. That is, the DNA is not all the same among people. I'll go even further to say that whatever was planted ages ago, this is hundreds of thousands of years ago, maybe even millions of years ago, was put inside of us to change. Kind of like a slow-acting pill that you take. Over time, it starts to manifest and it starts to work differently. A time release pill is what I want to say. I do believe we have some of that in us as well. And I think some of the changes going on in our society and our world are part of that. I do believe intuition was and psychic abilities were, yes, very commonplace hundreds of thousands of years ago. And I'm not a historian, but I can see that there was a reset on our planet, I want to say about the Middle Ages, to about maybe the 13th century, somewhere around there. I do believe people became different. Was that because of alien influence? Yeah, very much so. People have asked me about parallel universes. Is there a world going on as we're going through our world that's parallel to ours? I do believe so, just because, well, how do I do readings? How can I see the future? How can I see into your past? How can I remote view into your home that's 3,000 miles away from me without ever seeing it? How can I talk to your deceased relatives on the other side? Of course, what we see is not the complete picture. It's not the complete reality of life here. So if you want to call it a parallel universe, that's quite fitting. We can call it that. Do I believe that aliens are here on this planet? Yes, absolutely. They haven't come up so much in readings. But, you know, when scientists explore space and they explore beyond our planet, they're just using science. They're just using what they can see. When you can see psychically and feel through the universe, like I do this planet, you can see another world there. You can see a lot of interaction. We've got a lot of problems coming up in this world soon. Do I think aliens have an influence in that? Partly. Life has to go on. Life has to reproduce. It has to manifest. I think it's all part of it. Does this also mean we don't have past lives? No, we have past lives. But past lives are not exactly what we all think, you know, dying and then being born into another body. It's not exactly like that. Past lives can actually be influenced by the spirit world, the spirit realm. So we have interaction with spirit. So, can you experience a past life just from the physical? No, you can also experience a past life through the spiritual too. And people look at me with their mouths open, like, huh? I don't get that. It's so simple and it's so complicated at the same time. But these are things that a psychic sees all quite often. I mean, yes, my day-to-day thing is I do readings for people and I'm more engaged on the problems of not having food for lunch and, having to pay bills later. So, I go through my daily routine. But a part of me has really been thinking about our origins of life. Look at how many cultures, different cultural backgrounds we have. From Africa to Asia, to the Aborigines, to the Native Americans, to the Western culture. Now, did we all were we always this way? Were we all from the same planets, universe? No. Why do we think that alien life is just one thing? Why do we think that there's only one alien race out in space? See, the thing is, over millions of years, planets are uninhabitable. Just like Mars. I mean, I think that Mars was actually once an inhabitable planet. Can I use remote viewing to look at Mars? Yes. I think Mars had water on it at one point. I couldn't even tell you how long ago, though. And our time on this planet is different than space time. We know that scientifically. I mean, if you go to the planet Jupiter, like in some of these sci-fi movies, 6 months equals what? 5 years, 10 years on this planet. So it's variable in space. But it is a really fascinating subject matter, talking about space, talking about our origins. I think these subject matters should be talked about among other psychics. I mean, even scientists have said the likelihood of no life in the universe, it's unlikely. I mean, it's an absolute 100%. But scientists cannot read the spirit life in the universe. So when I'm focusing on the universe, I see the spirit life. It's very interesting. If I use remote viewing to focus on it, to focus what I'm seeing, it is a little hard to navigate how far away. I will tell you that. Of course, they've talked about black holes and stuff like that. I think they exist. I think they've explained it quite well. And yeah, I believe those black holes are a sort of a time slot. But when we talk about the ancient cultures on this planet, and we think, okay, alien life came down, gave them a hand, or they saw alien life. going much further into their lives, I believe that we were all once aliens from other planets. No, I don't think that we descended from apes. Of course, human living conditions on the planet will make us change. I mean, what's going on now is quite disturbing. Many people are becoming very terminally sick at the moment. I mean, cancer from the 1970s on, it's now 1 in 3. Might even be more than that. Is it because of our diet? Is it because of our genetics? It's a lot of things. A lot of things. But thinking out of the box is kind of what I do. I do it in my daily work, whether I'm talking about somebody's boyfriend or if I'm talking about a missing pet. It's very important to think about when things go right. It's also important to think about when things don't go wrong. What is the reason for that? Intuition comes through readily available, so there's not a day where, okay, well, maybe you just weren't doing well enough on this. It doesn't, it's not something that most intuitives would say, no, it doesn't quite work that way. It depends on people we're reading. Of course, the only thing that might drag us down if we're tired, we just don't really feel like talking that much. But talking about the universe and talking about the origins of this planet do fascinate me right at the moment. I know that this planet was covered with water mostly at one time. I believe the Sahara and all the deserts were covered with water. I think in the future they will again. I do believe Atlantis was real. I believe it's underwater. I mean, the changes that I see on this planet from going back millions of years, as an example, I would say close to 1 million years ago, we had very sophisticated people on this planet. Very sophisticated. Very sophisticated technology. But somewhere, something, things have influenced us. And then I think we were kind of left alone after a certain amount of time in history where it's just we're on our own, but we're developing sophisticated technology right now. And I think we are moving forward to making a change to explore the universe. I think that's in our DNA, is because we've been told that this planet will eventually not be habitable anymore and that we need to develop technology to go into space. I do believe that. When? I can't say. I'm really bad with numbers too, so it's not that I don't want to talk about it, just I would say that it will be a long time from now. Excuse me, that was my stomach growling. Anyway, if you do have psychic abilities, developing them is not so hard. The old saying goes, practice makes perfect. So test yourself. Very early on, when I was discovering my abilities, I tested myself. I was my worst critic. I was my hardest critic, I should say. I had no interest in psychic abilities or mediumship, and I had no interest. Wasn't until about my 30s. Then suddenly I came into them and I wanted to know more. But it took also about 10 years of practice before I even thought about doing it professionally. And people would look at me like I was crazy. But then I'd end up helping finding their missing cat, or I'd help with a murder case, or I would do readings for people. It just became more and more popular. I also refined what I did, you know. Somebody told me recently, they said, you must have to be very careful about what you say in readings and stuff. I do. I do. Unfortunately, we have a public that doesn't always have good intentions. They are trying to find fault with everything. Especially in this country. When I do readings for other people, other cultures, it's very different. As an example, the Indian culture is very open to this kind of work, and they're a real pleasure to talk to. Very open. I really do hope something happens in this society that makes people open up a little bit to where we've come from and where we're going. We need a new message. I don't really think religion's the answer for that. I think it's just going to be discussing the possibilities of the universe. Could help what's going on here on our planet. And yes, I have seen some of these shows on TV talking about ancient aliens and stuff like that, and I would generously say that they're probably about 100% right on most of their theories. But it must be a real hard job because you're competing with science, and science just doesn't have all the answers, and they do admit it. But there's been different resets going on in our history in regards to alien interaction with our society, with our people here. I definitely think that some of these pyramids and some of these structures had to do with very advanced technology, a communication system of sorts. between people on this planet and people off of this planet. But don't doubt for a minute what you think when we talk about these primitive cultures. We're not exactly that primitive. Oh, sure, we might find some ancient sandals that were woven from grass or something like that. That doesn't mean they were a primitive culture, primitive race. That is still very black and white thinking. Definitely some of the legends among the Native Americans, all the rich old cultures and traditions, all talk about space people. They all have a story about creation. The Aborigines are highly fascinating people. And they have those kind of stories as well. We also find some of these old cultures that just disappeared. People wondered, where'd they go? There's no remains of them. They're just gone. Well, it's very possible some of them just left Earth. So I would really welcome people to start thinking out of the box, start thinking about some of these subject matters. I find them very relevant to today. I also feel that genetically or from the ancient aliens, so to speak, that there are some bad people here too. And they have a different DNA than us. Of course, we've become very sophisticated with understanding DNA and science, but I don't think it's sophisticated enough. I don't think it's just DNA. We also have a spiritual essence too. But I definitely think that there's a lot of newer aliens in human form on this planet. So hopefully I will not leave your jaw dropping at this point. I have spoken to some customers who do believe that they've had a lot of interaction with extraterrestrial life, and I do believe it. I do believe it. I mean, this is our origin. Going back millions of years ago. There was a very sophisticated race here. So, as far as testing yourself with remote viewing, that's very important, is to test yourself. It's kind of interesting that when I'm doing remote viewing and I'm looking for a missing object in somebody's apartment, and they'll tell me, well, I can do FaceTime with you and walk you through the apartment. Would that help? And I say, no, it actually make it worse. And then they ask why. And I say, because what I see is not what I see on the camera, and that confuses me. But what I see, you understand. And that leads you to where we're heading in the apartment. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's my mind sees it, but it's not exactly the way the picture is showing it. But when I explain it to somebody, then they see it very clearly the way they're looking at their apartment. That has always kind of interested me. Yeah, sometimes I look at photos. Often I'll look at photos of deceased people who somebody tries to connect to. But, the thing is that we can't connect to everybody. I don't really know the reason behind that. But it all depends who I work with and the client I work with as well. And it's funny, people don't have to be open to my work in order for me to see clearly. I've had a lot of skeptics that I've worked with, usually males. They'll say to me, well, I've never done this before, and I kind of believe, but I just don't know how it's done. I can usually see very clear for them. It's actually the ones who usually have a attitude in their mind already that can throw me off. Like, I don't want to give this guy too much information. Well, they'll try to hide things, and that just confuses me, is all. And in my mind, I'll say, well, why are you trying to confuse me? Anyway. But I welcome your thoughts on this. And if you have any, these podcasts, I just figured out how to put up on YouTube. I'm really not good at technical stuff, so I apologize for that. But YouTube now has an option for putting podcasts up, and I was able to do that the other day. So please leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me I'm crazy. But it's been a very interesting time for me lately because I've really been inspired by life on other planets, life here, where we came from. And it kind of helps me to make sense about where we're heading now and why we have the problems we do. It really does. I think there is kind of a master plan. Not necessarily an influence coming down, creating a plan for us, but a plan that has already been put into place inside of us. Physically, psychologically, it's in our cells. And it's very interesting. It's a very hard time to be a psychic right now. Because I've been really busy. I mean, extremely busy. And there's some very frazzled people out there at the moment. And my life isn't perfect, but I just try to keep my cool. And that's my job, is to kind of keep it very even keel when I'm navigating through somebody's life and what's going on. So this is all for today. I will leave you with this. I am still writing my book, It's kind of slowed down, I hate to say. I haven't been writing a lot, but occasionally I come up with a new passage, new subject matter. I talk about some of my old cases. But it's really overwhelming to me because the more I get into the book, the more work I realize I've done. Oh, I forgot about that case some years ago. There has been so much that I could keep writing about it. All the different cases that I've worked on, people that I've worked with. So perhaps next time I will share some passages from my book. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me. I am feeling better. It's the lingering effects of the cold, the congestion. You go and you fall asleep at night, all goes back in your head, and then you wake up in the morning, it all comes out again. Back and forth, back and forth. Anyway, I wish you farewell, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.